As a society, we need to step back for a moment and reflect on the following. One, are we losing our values that define us as a people? Put differently, have we lost our African philosophy of Ubunduism, which is loosely defined as I am because you are? Secondly, are we really looking out for the interest of the child as we interact with technology? Or are we turning the internet, which is one of the most transformative innovations of our time, into the Wild West? In addition, are we harnessing the true value of social media in general and film in particular? Or have we, as a people, normalized violence and misogyny to the point of being insensitive to these vices? Are we also dealing with issues of mental health as a society? As we ponder on these issues as a society, the Kenya Film Classification Board, in the exercise of its consumer advisory role, wishes to state as follows. One, that the freedom of expression, which is enshrined under Article 33 of our Constitution, is not absolute. It has certain limitations. Freedom of expression must also be interpreted within the broader context of other provisions of the Constitution, including Article 11 on culture, Article 24 on the limitation of rights and fundamental freedoms, and Articles 53 and 55, which advocate for the right of the child and the youth, respectively. Offenders, therefore, ought to take note of these limitations. Secondly, it is illegal Cybercrime Act states, and I quote, a person who transfers, publishes, disseminates, including making a digital depiction available for distribution or downloading through a telecommunications network or through any other means of transferring data to a computer, the intimate or obscene image of a person commits an offense and is liable to a fine not exceeding 200,000 shillings or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years or both. Further, Article 31 of the Constitution provides for the right to privacy over information relating to one's family and private affairs. This provision protects one's intimate images from being unnecessarily required or revealed. In the recent past, our courts have imposed highly punitive fines on violators of this provision. Victims of such gross violations, therefore, should not suffer in silence, but should seek legal redress from the courts. Third, the laws of Kenya outlaw the distribution and possession of obscene cinematograph films meant to corrupt morals. In particular, Section 181, 1A of the Penal Code states that any person for the purpose of or by way of trade or distribution or public exhibition makes or has in possession any obscene cinematograph films tending to corrupt the morals is guilty of a misdemeanor and is liable to imprisonment for 2 years or to a fine of 7,000 shillings. Therefore, persons that are streaming explicit sexual content on social media platforms risk arrest and prosecution. It is important to note that the board has been and shall continue to monitor various platforms with a view to collecting evidence for onward transmission to the Directorate of Criminal Investigations for prosecution. Fourthly, the board appeals to parents caregivers and guardians to pay attention and to keenly monitor the content children under their care access on social media networks, broadcast channels, and other platforms. In cases where children have access to the internet and smart devices, parents must exercise responsibility to ensure minors do not access inappropriate content. Further, parents are encouraged to activate the safety features available on various platforms and smart devices used by minors in order to protect children from corruption of their morals. We also urge social media operators, online distributors, and exhibitors to enforce their community guidelines strictly to avoid misuse of their platforms. Moderation of content in their respective platforms must be in alignment with our laws and cultural values. In addition, they also need to institute appropriate control mechanisms in the interest of enhancing online safety, especially for children. In addition, social media users need to reflect on child online safety before sharing video or film content on digital platforms. If in doubt, they should make reference to the film classification guidelines which the board uses to assign age-appropriate ratings. The said guidelines are available on our corporate website at no cost. We also urge registered audiovisual content platforms and operators across the country to ensure that they adhere to the provisions of CAP 222 and other laws, including creating content that does not compromise our culture, moral values, and national aspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, going forward, it is important to note that the board shall continue to monitor and flag offensive and disturbing audiovisual content and report the same to relevant government agencies and platform operators for appropriate action. In addition, in collaboration with relevant public and private sector agencies, the board will continue empowering parents, caregivers with the necessary skills and knowledge to enable them help children navigate the online environment safely. Through the Parental Digital Literacy Program that we launched in February, the board has joined hands with Netflix, TikTok, and Google to empower parents with this knowledge so that they can take their parenting responsibilities effectively in an increasingly digital environment. Lastly, the Ministry of Youth Affairs, the Arts and Sports, in consultation with the board, is reviewing the legal and policy environment with a view to ensuring an enabling legal and regulatory environment in the sector. As I speak, the parent ministry has revised the films and stage plays regulations and film classification guidelines for public participation. We encourage industry players and other stakeholders to submit their inputs on the draft regulations and guidelines before the 28th April 2023, when the consultations will close. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now the CEO has given the speech. Anybody with a comment, concern, maybe a question, you just say your name and then ask the question, please.
Thank you. I think that is a very important question. And that's why we've decided to issue this advisory today. And basically to indicate that these technologies are very important and constructive tools actually that can be monetized in a proper manner. But as we take advantage of the availability of these platforms, we need to realize that there are laws that must be observed. For instance, you cannot host a live show and peddle pornography, because pornography in this country, distributing it actually is a crime, as I've indicated in the statement. So we know that that medium has become very popular. I think it's a leading platform now globally. But again, we need to be very sensitive to the welfare of our children, so that we do not host shows that could really cause them emotional or social harm in the long run. We need to allow children to be children and not to be exposed to adult experiences prematurely. And parents actually, as I've also alluded to in the statement, as they allow children to take advantage of technology, because technology is good for them. Technology can enhance their educational outcomes or learning outcomes. It can also be a very good tool for entertainment. But these platforms have tools that parents can use to ensure that children use those platforms safely. If you go to TikTok, for instance, there are provisions where you can limit the amount of time, screen time, that the child can have on the platform. And you can put your pin, a pin that the child doesn't see. And you probably restrict it for an hour. And it will mean that the child may not get affected. And you can also put certain settings within the platform that will ensure that certain videos or micro videos are not visible to the child. So parents, it is important to ensure that to facilitate our children to interact with technology, because technology is good and good for children. But we need to be careful, not really to leave all the spaces open so that they can be able to view anything that is available, because they are children and they are not allowed. It is not in their interest to watch videos that are adult or that are meant for mature people. So, and that's why we are calling on parents, really, as you subscribe to internet at home. It's a good, very important tool. As you buy a child smart devices, have some rules around it. Like, for instance, ideally, you need to have a conversation with the child or the minor about how they will use the device. You agree on the times, the hours that the child will use the device during the day, and encourage them to watch or to utilize those devices in spaces where everybody is available. Because when you do that, it is unlikely that they will fear to sites that are not appropriate for them. And let us limit the screen time. The internet and technology can be addictive, actually, we leave it open. And the tools are there on your devices. The tools are there on those platforms. Parents need really to take the effort, the additional effort of ensuring that they activate some of these provisions, so that, or these safety features, so that the child, at the end of the day, is protected from harm.
Maybe she wanted also to know if there are any steps we've already taken, like being in talks with the platform.
Basically, what we monitor, and where we see people abusing those platforms, we write to the platform operators and flag that content and say that according to your community guidelines, this user is abusing those community guidelines. Or according to the laws of the land, these activities are not allowable and you need to pay more attention. We do that all the time. Yeah.
No, okay, just a second. Jenga had stood and followed by yourself.
I would not want to go in the direction of that this platform is bad, it cannot be used, or that the children should not be allowed to use it. The guiding factor or the guidance that we're issuing today is that the parent needs to take an interest of what the child is accessing, the content that the child is accessing online. And as I've indicated, in most of these platforms, even the ones that have, some of which have been cited here, there are safety features that have been embedded on those platforms. And the parent just needs to, be aware of those features, and they can activate them. And the child will use that platform without any fear of accessing content that is not appropriate for their age. So we will not want, as about to say, that avoid this media, avoid this social media app. No. Let parents know that parenting has changed. It is not what it used to be. This is a very digitalized environment. Technologies are there. Children are way ahead of the parents. And that's why we've launched the Parental Digital Literacy Program. So that, because we've realized kids take to technology as a duck takes to water. And that's why we are saying parents need to really build their capacity so that they can know that there are certain things they can do to ensure that the child actually uses technology and interacts with technologies safely.
Kwanza kabisa naomba kumkosoa jambo kidogo. Niseme kwamba mirasi kwa sababu natambuliwa na sheria ya Kenya kama like a crop. Secondly, cash crop is scheduled crop. Secondly, I want to know how many explicit content you flagged so far. Na mnatumia taratibu zipi kufanya kazi, kwa sababu hatujaona kwa mtandao imekiwa hiyo data KFCB wamesema hii video haikubaliki.
You know, the platforms are operated by foreign companies, most of them. But as government institutions, we are allowed to flag content that is not in alignment with our laws. And we do that all the time. There was a video recently there's one that we flagged. Which one was that?
The live streaming of what we call masturbation session.
Yes.
I don't want to mention which platform, and those accounts were closed.
Yeah.
I think the only challenge we have with the OTTs is that one account is closed, then probably another one is open. But every time we come across them, we flag to the OTTs, and they close them down.
And maybe even as the CEO is saying, if you go and put it out there, then you will be asking everybody to do so. We flag with the relevant people. We leave it at that. As long as we know there's no exposure, then there's no risk.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Recently, there have been a lot of obscene photos and videos on social media, and I want action to be taken apart from just issue against the parents. And also, what kind of which social media platform is mostly used to spread these kind of obscene photos?
Yes, I'll shy away from mentioning platforms here. But generally, quite a number of them, the ones that operate in the country, where we find violations, we will flag, and the platform operators will bring that content down. I don't want to name and say that this platform, because as I said, it's not that the platforms are necessarily bad. Indeed, if you look at the people creating that content, there are people here, are they not? The platform operators given us the access to the platform to monetize our content. But we are saying, let us not monetize the content that we put there by going into spaces that are not allowable by our laws. Because there are people who are selling houses on some of these platforms, across all these platforms. And that's a good thing. I see even education sessions on some of those platforms. So if I sit here and tell parents that don't use this platform, I will not be giving the right advice. But I'm saying technology, just like fire, has its good side and has also its own harmful side. And we need to ensure that we strike the right balance so that we tame fire and use it for our own benefit. That's what we are saying. And that's why we are saying the responsibility at the end of it all is to those people who are creating content. Create content, we will give you that freedom to create content. But please respect the laws. Respect our cultures. Respect our cultural values. So that you make sure that you get money out of your content, you don't abuse the law. Because we are getting concerned that we may be losing it as a society. It actually, the laws, as I've indicated, allow the person who is offended by either the sharing of their intimate images or private images to take legal action against them, based on the provisions of the Constitution on privacy. Some individual, I think in the recent past, was fined 1 million shillings for sharing intimate photos of a certain lady without her consent. And that's why we are talking about the prejudices that the Kenyan society will tend to have against women. Misogyny. You know, we have daughters, we have sisters. We need to be sensitive. Revenge pornography. You have been having a relationship with a lady or with a gentleman. It goes south. You have been taking images when the relationship was flourishing and things were very rosy. Now, when they turn south, you decide to disseminate that content online. That is illegal. You'll be prosecuted. You'll be fined 1 million shillings. And it will be difficult for you. And you can also be put in prison for doing that kind of thing. So that's why we are saying, as we create content, we need to manage ourselves so that at the end of it, we protect the dignity, the privacy of our colleagues, even those who have offended us. And also respect women so that we do not really use images that we have at our possession when things were good to shame them in the future. You'll be arrested, you'll be prosecuted, and you'll have a very difficult time. Yes.
Who exactly is going to be arrested? Is it the blogger that shared the photo or the one that sent the photo to the blogger? Because they have Telegram channels where they actually have a separate channel for explicit videos and photos.
I'm saying, basically, the person sharing the message, the information, whether the blogger or the person who shared it at the first instance, you are already in violation of the privacy laws of the land. And where we flag your account for doing those kind of things, the platform operator will bring the account down. So basically, but we are also telling the platform operators, if you listen to me keenly, that they have certain community guidelines or standards that they say must be observed within the platform. Enforce those community guidelines. They should not be rules that are written and they are never enforced. Yes.
Would you say that people who share personal or rather pornographic material maybe in revenge will be prosecuted by this? Do you mean that the onus is on the aggrieved party? In this case, if it's a woman or a man whose explicit photos have been shared, or do you as KFCB have a role to actually prosecute the case?
For abuse of privacy, it is the role of the offended party to go to court and demand that the culprit is made to face the full force of the law.
So what's your role other than
Advisory, consumer advisory. That's why I've said we are doing this, and our consumer advisory role to advise consumers of the things that they need to note in this environment of film and videos. Yeah, so that there are people, there are women and men who are living in shame because of revenge pornography, porn. So they shouldn't. They are protected by the law, and that's why we are saying that to make these incidents not to be many, people need to be prosecuted. There are people who have taken the bold step to go to court, and as I have indicated, people have been imprisoned. Others have been fined 1 million Kenya shillings. So we need to be aware, so that we don't, unwittingly violate the laws and find ourselves in very bad place in respect to the laws of the land, and that we also do not offend the privacy, the dignity of others as we use these technologies.
Again, naomba tukumbushe hivi, kuna yale madhehebu ama kanisa ambayo wanahubiri na kupeperusha mahubiri ambayo yamefuatana na sheria ya Kenya. Unajua kama bodi kuna jukumu mkono amepewa nguvu, tunafanya nini pengine kuareka?
Basically, we don't regulate religion. I will speak in English. You allow me to speak in English. If you want me to do Kiswahili, we do it in the office. Now, we do not regulate religion as KFCB. We regulate film. But if you record your teachings in audiovisual format, either for broadcast on television or for distribution through the social media platforms, and that video has been recorded without conforming to the laws that govern this film sector. For instance, if you are making a film in Kenya for purposes of sale or exhibition, you are required to get a license from KFCB. So the issue that we will do, we will ask you, did you get a license to shoot this film? The other requirement after you do the film is, if it is going for broadcast or for distribution through any other medium within the country, it is supposed to be submitted to us for classification. The reason or rationale for classification is to assign an age-appropriate rating. It could be, I'm sure you've seen some of them behind me here. So that, is it good for general viewership? We will call it general exhibition. Is it good for kids of 10 years and above? We will say PG-10. Is it for 16 and above? We'll give it a rating of 16. Or is it for mature people? We'll give it a rating of 18. So if you have not submitted the content for classification, that is a violation of the law. And I think the preacher, the Malindi preacher who has run into problems with the law, I think there's a time we took him to court on the basis of airing content that was doing radicalization, and even without submitting it to KFCB for classification, and for shooting the language, the video, without in violation of other laws of the land. So we've taken measures where a video is involved. If it's a church and you are radicalizing people through oral means, the other agencies of government will deal with you. But if there's a film that you are making for distribution, you will need a license. And it must be classified. And it is on the basis of these two violations that the preacher was taken to court. His case is still in the courts. It's coming for a hearing in June. So it's something that we've done in the past, and we'll be willing to do in the future if the need arises. Mackenzie, that was Mackenzie actually. I don't know whether my compliance people have issues with.
I think as the seal has indicated, as long as it's content and then for distribution to the public, for public distribution, we wouldn't say that that is the only content that we've come across. We've come across other content of a similar nature because we have classification, a thematic area in the classification guidelines in regard to
Religion.
Community, and even occult, and even aura. Because some of them, as much as it's recorded probably for religious purposes, some of them can be very horrific. So we've flagged that content for charge. Only that, as the CEO has indicated, we cannot go mentioning every other violator that you have dealt with, because it doesn't mean that if you violated on one content, that everything is just a blanket. So that's why we protect mentioning the names of the other, but we have captured from other sects or from other religious institutions.
Thank you.
Asanteni sana.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me, sir. You know, umesema kuna ule anakuja ofisi. Kuna hiyo. Thank you.